We are live on the Chef Girl Nutrition Facebook page for a Tuesday cooking demo. I'm here every Tuesday doing a demo to help you learn something about healthy cooking, something to make healthy cooking a little bit easier, something tangible that you can use in your life right away. So every Tuesday I'm here either doing a cooking demo or talking about some hot topic in nutrition, giving you some clarity around some things that bring about a lot of confusion when it comes to healthy eating to just make things more simple for you. So for today's demo, we're focusing on breakfast. So I recently asked people in my community, in my audience, about which meal of the day, whether that be breakfast, lunch, dinner, or even snacks, which one brings you the most challenges, right? Which one do you find the most challenging to get the meal in every day? Which one is most difficult for you to make it a nutritious meal that's satisfying? And the most popular answers were breakfast and lunch. So breakfast, of course, it makes sense, right? We're rushing out the door. Of course, things are a little bit different in the pandemic world, but typically, the mornings are a bit rushed. Even so, if you're home and you have kids at home now doing virtual school at home, you're working from home, it actually still does become quite a chaotic morning, right? It's not like you suddenly have this leisurely morning being home. There's a lot that we need to do, get situated for the day, and sometimes breakfast, especially if it's not planned, breakfast can kind of be a bit of a headache. You know that you should eat breakfast, but if you don't have anything planned and you're trying to decide what to eat in the moment that you're already hungry or trying to feed your kids or whatever it is, it can be kind of a headache to figure out what to eat. And not only what to eat, but you're trying to make it something that's nutritious and balanced to actually keep you feeling satisfied until either your morning snack or your lunch. And you also want it, to taste good, right? So there's a few different things that go into choosing what to eat. So breakfast can definitely be a challenge. So I'm going to focus over the next few weeks, I'm going to focus these demos on helping you with ideas of really good make-ahead meals and snacks. So things that you can make ahead for breakfast, for lunches. Even what we're making today is actually great for a snack as well, or an evening dessert. So we'll get into it in just a second here. But we talked about meal planning and prep a lot last month, and I did a whole live on that with some tips for meal planning and prep. And breakfast and lunch, really identifying the meal that is the most difficult for you, that's the meal that you should focus on with your meal planning and prep. So if you only choose one meal to plan and prep for, it should be the one that is the most challenging for you. Or the one that's going to take the most time off your hands, the most stress off your plate, whatever that reward is that you're looking for, and whatever brings the most challenge to you, that's what you want to focus on. So a little planning and prep can go a long way when it comes to breakfast, right? Breakfast doesn't have to be like you're making eggs fresh every morning, you're making homemade pancakes every morning. That's usually not what anybody has time for on a regular weekday. So there's a lot of different great options of make-ahead breakfasts that you cook them once and they'll last you, at least a few days through the week. So today we are focusing on a breakfast recipe, and that is baked oatmeal. So specifically today we're making apple cinnamon baked oatmeal, but as we're making it, I'm going to just talk you through, the general ingredients for making baked oatmeal. So of course, oatmeal is kind of a breakfast staple, but I don't know about you, but I have experienced more than like a lot of times my oatmeal exploding in the microwave, right? And even though I know that it happens, I keep an eye on my oatmeal, it still happens, right? And it's like the last thing that you need in the morning is an oatmeal explosion in your microwave. So this baked oatmeal is going to be a great alternative to making oatmeal from scratch in the morning. That's a great thing to save for a nice weekend morning, but during the week when we want something that's already made and prepped for us in the fridge, something that's easy to take on the go if you need to take it on the go. And like I said, this will also work really well for a snack or a little nighttime dessert. So baked oatmeal gives you all of the beauty of oatmeal, right? So we're using rolled oats, rolled or old-fashioned oats as our base. So I have those here in my bowl. So the rolled oats are the ones that are in a more, like a thicker, more whole form as compared to instant cooking oats, which are the ones that cook fast and they're more broken down. So we want the rolled or old-fashioned oats here. You could make a baked oatmeal with instant oats. I haven't done it, but it should work out. So we get all the goodness from our oats in the baked oatmeal, but we actually get a little bit of a boost in protein with the baked oatmeal because we are adding eggs in there and milk. So any milk of your choice, but if you use dairy milk or if you use a higher protein non-dairy alternative like soy milk or milk from pea protein, something like that, you'll get a nice boost of protein in this baked oatmeal as well. Okay, so we're going to get into the recipe now, and I'm going to, like I said, as I'm going through it, I'm just going to kind of point out what the main components of the baked oatmeal are. The beautiful thing about a baked oatmeal is that it's very versatile. It's easy to change up the different add-ins that you put in there. So for this one, we're putting chopped apples and I'm using some pecans that I have, but you could easily change up the fillings. You could change up the fruit. You could change up, you know, the nuts or seeds that you put in there. You can change the spices that you put in. So I'm just using cinnamon today, but I have another recipe for, this thing is bugging me. I have another recipe for pumpkin baked oatmeal. So that uses a can of canned pumpkin puree with pumpkin pie spice. You can add, you know, to the apple one, you could add ginger, nutmeg, cloves, all of that kind of good stuff. And of course you could do something like a berry baked oatmeal. Maybe in the winter you use frozen berries. That would be a great use for frozen berries here. So apples are just good right now. They're, you know, they're really in season in the fall, but they're kind of one of those fruits that you can get year round. And in the winter where we have a little bit less fruit in season, apples can still be a really good go-to. So that's what we're doing today. So like I said, the base, of course, is our oats. So I have 2 cups of rolled oats in a bowl here. Just like with anything that we're baking, usually we're mixing our wet and our dry ingredients separately, and then we're adding them together. So that's what we're doing here. So I have 2 apples here that I cut into sections, just around the core. And then I'm just chopping them into smaller diced pieces like this. All right, so I just stack them up and I just chop right through them. You could also use pears for this. We want about 2 cups of apples total. So it should be about 2 small apples or 1 larger apple. And you can, of course, use whatever kind of apples you like. I'm actually doing a mix of Fuji and Honeycrisp because that's what I had. But it's nice to do kind of a combo of different apples because then you'll get like the Fuji is very sweet and then the Honeycrisp is a little bit more tart. So a really nice thing is to do like a green apple, some kind of green apple with a sweeter red apple. So you get a nice balance of the tart and sweet. So this baked oatmeal, you'll see it comes together really quickly. And then it just goes into the oven. And so once it's in the oven, you know, you put the timer on, you don't have to touch it, you don't have to flip it, you don't have to do anything. So once it's in the oven, it's just there and you can carry on with the rest of your meal prep. So that's why it's a great thing to add into your weekly meal prep. Another great thing about the baked oatmeal is that it can be eaten at room temperature. So it's a great breakfast to take on the go. It doesn't even have to be reheated. And once it's cooled out of the pan, you can wrap them up in individual pieces, wrap them up in, plastic wrap or a container, whatever. And, all right, I think I have enough apple here. These were 2 pretty big apples, so I'm not going to chop up all of them. So you can take, once it's cooled out of the oven, cut them up and wrap up the pieces individually. So easy to just grab one in the morning, whether you're taking it to your home office desk or you're taking it somewhere to go. It will just be an easy go-to breakfast that is nutritious and satisfying. We'll talk about some, ideas for what you can serve it with if you want to make it even more filling of a meal. Okay, so we're focusing on our dry ingredients first. Just switching out my cutting board here from my bowl. All right, so I have my 2 cups of oats. We're gonna add a teaspoon of baking powder. And so the baking powder is just going to help the oatmeal, kind of poof up a little bit so it's not just flat and sad. We're going to add 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon. So like I said, this is where you can customize your spices. So the oats and the baking powder, standard for whatever kind of baked oatmeal you're making. And then when it comes to the spices, whatever flavor you want to add in there, kind of up to you. Oops. Okay, so 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Okay, so the oats, baking powder, and salt would be like your dry base plus 1 to 2 teaspoons of whatever kind of spices you want to add in there. All right, so 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I'm just going to mix that around with my hands. So that's it for our dry ingredients. So I do this in a big bowl because we're going to then now mix our wet ingredients separately and add them into the dry. So we want to start the dry in a nice big bowl. That's where we're going to add everything else. All right, so now in our wet ingredient bowl, 2 eggs, 2 large eggs. Right, so again, that would be a standard for whatever kind of oatmeal you're going to make. We want 2 cups of milk. Now I will say when it comes to the liquid, you will want to pay attention to other liquid ingredients you're using. So I mentioned I have done a pumpkin baked oatmeal. So that can of pureed pumpkin is pretty wet, right? So with the apple one, we're not adding any sort of puree. You could, if you wanted to do like less milk and add in some applesauce, you could do something like that. But so you do want to be cautious of the liquid, that you're not adding too much liquid if you're also adding some sort of like fruit puree that adds some more liquid to your batter. But definitely eggs and some sort of milk, like I said, milk of your choice will be the base for your wet ingredients. We're using 1/3 cup of maple syrup. You could also use honey. You could also use brown sugar if you wanted to. I personally love the flavor of maple syrup, so that's why I typically am using maple syrup as a sweetener. We want 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Okay. And then 2 tablespoons of coconut oil or butter that's been melted. So I just have 2 tablespoons of butter here that I already melted and let it cool a bit, because we don't want to add hot butter to raw eggs. So you do want to let it have a chance to cool down. I'm actually going to grab a fork. So I'm going to start the mixing with a fork so I can whisk up those eggs. So to recap, our dry ingredients for a general, base is our oats, baking powder and salt, plus whatever spices you're going to use. And your wet ingredient base is eggs, milk, some sort of sweetener, some sort of fat, butter, coconut oil. You could also use like a neutral flavored oil. If you didn't want to use butter or coconut oil, you could use just like a canola oil, vegetable oil, something like that. And I also added vanilla in here, which I think is always a nice addition to any sort of baked good. Okay. All right, and then we are going to add our wet ingredients right into the dry. Okay. And I'm going to use a rubber spatula to mix those together. And that's really it. So I'm just going to be adding my apples in here now. Okay, and it will be pretty liquidy. So don't worry that it, if it looks like it's pretty wet, it will be pretty liquidy. Okay. So I'm going to add all my apples in here. Fold those in. You can see, I'll show you what it looks like, the texture looks like. Okay. So this is what we have. So you can see it is pretty, it is pretty liquidy. That is what we want. Okay, and the last thing we need is our pecans. So I'm just gonna chop some pecans up. Again, you can use any sort of nut or seed that you want. I like to add the nuts in here, not just for, flavor and texture. Of course, it adds that, which we love, but it also adds healthy fat to the oatmeal, which is something that makes it an even more satisfying dish, right? So having that fat in there helps balance, the carbs from the oats. Healthy fat is a big factor in how long a meal leaves you feeling satisfied. So sometimes, this is like another example, sometimes something as simple as adding some avocado or some nuts to something like a salad, that otherwise didn't really have any fat in it, that can make a big difference in how satisfying it is and how, how full it keeps you feeling for how long. So it's always good, you always want to pay attention to your meals, that there's a good balance of carbs that are preferably fiber-rich carbs, right? So that's where whole grains come in, or starchy vegetables. We want protein, of course, and we want some healthy fat. So a good balance of all of those in a meal is what's going to make it the most satisfying and keep you fuller for longer. All right, so I'm adding these pecans in. You can save some of the pecans. I didn't really have enough left in this bag. You can save some of the pecans and sprinkle them over the top of the baked oatmeal. But I'm just folding these guys in here. Okay, so that's that. So I have, this one is an 8x8 Like I said, you could also do a 9x9. The 9x9, it'll just be a little bit thinner because the pan is a little bit bigger, and in the 8x8, it'll be a little bit thicker. We just want to lightly grease it with spray or with butter or coconut oil, something to grease it a little bit, and just pour it all in there. All right. I'm just going to, it's all in, just going to flatten it out, spread it nicely. Want to, make sure, kind of like when you're pouring like brownies into a pan, right? You want to just make sure that everything is kind of nicely distributed. You don't want like one really thick spot. Okay. And that's it. So that's our apple cinnamon baked oatmeal. So you can see how quickly that came together. The oven is preheated to 375, so I'm going to put that in there now. And we're going to do about 30 minutes to start. It'll take anywhere from like 30 to 35 minutes at 375. You just, of course, you can check it with a toothpick in the center to make sure that it's cooked through in the middle, and just check that it's firm. You'll be able to know when it's done. And yeah, so like I said, obviously it's great as a breakfast. That's kind of what we're talking about here. So it's great as a breakfast. If you want to bulk it up even more, make it even more filling, I love to serve it with a dollop of Greek yogurt over the top, so that adds a little punch of protein. You can eat it with some nut butter. You can have, a little scoop of peanut butter or almond butter with it to add some more healthy fat to it. So those are two good options to make it even more satisfying, to make it even more filling, kind of depending on you and, how hungry you are in the morning, how much you like to eat in the morning. But that's something that's really nice about the baked oatmeal too, is it's something very, especially in the winter, if you do reheat it, it's something that's really nice and warm and comforting, and it has a really great source of fiber-rich carbs, so it's a really great kind of breakfast. That's why oatmeal is great in general as a nutritious breakfast, because it gives you this kind of steady stream of energy throughout the morning. And like I said, it's also great as a snack, so you can just have maybe a smaller piece. I would say from that 8x8 dish, it makes 6 meal servings, so 6 breakfast servings. And then if you were going to have it as a snack, maybe you'd have like half of one of those pieces. Or it also works really great as like a nighttime snack, something that's a little bit sweet. You could even drizzle a little bit more maple syrup or honey over it to make it a little bit sweeter if if you want something sweet. You can see how it really, it's a very basic, general kind of formula for how to make the baked oatmeal, with just a base of the oats, baking powder, salt, and spices for our dry ingredients. For our wet ingredients, eggs, milk, some sort of fat, butter, coconut oil, or neutral flavored oil, plus any, I've added vanilla in there, and plus a sweetener. So whether that's honey, maple syrup, or brown sugar. And then any add-ins that you're going to put in, so any sorts of fruit, chopped fruit, berries, things like that. You could even put dried fruit in, and then things like nuts or seeds that you want to add in there. Another great thing, aside from like chopped nuts and seeds, is you can put ground flaxseed in there. That's a really good way to get some good omega-3 fatty acids in, by putting something like flaxseed in. So lots of different alternatives, lots of ways to play around with your favorite flavors and your favorite kinds of fruits and things. Think of what you normally eat in your regular oatmeal, and you can probably turn it into a baked oatmeal. And if you have any questions about that, or you want to kind of like run an idea by me, and I can give you some tips on how to put it together as a baked oatmeal, I would be happy to help you with that. And so I hope that this gives you a really good idea for a good make-ahead breakfast. Like I said, it keeps really well. It'll, you make it on your prep day on Sunday and keep it in the fridge all week to have a nice, easy grab and go breakfast. You don't have to think about it, and it's delicious. So no more, if you've kind of thought that like the only thing you could prep for breakfast is hard-boiled eggs and you hate hard-boiled eggs, you don't have to eat them. Right? There are a lot of different kinds of make-ahead breakfasts that are great. And like I said, for the next few weeks, I'll be talking about some different kinds of make-ahead breakfasts and lunches, and we'll get into snacks, all of that, because I think that is definitely something, that I hear a lot, that people, are always looking for some make-ahead dishes that also don't require you spending hours and hours in the kitchen, right? So this is nice and quick. It's an easy cleanup. It's just 2 bowls, right? And it's made, we're talking about pantry meals also, it's made with mostly pantry ingredients. So it's something that you can usually throw together, whenever, like as a last thought. I hope this was helpful for you to learn how to make a baked oatmeal. And I hope that you try a baked oatmeal and let me know how it goes for you.